Hello and welcome to Thought for Food. Today I have something completely different for you. But if you're like me and you've been on a health journey, for years and years, and you've, drank all the green smoothies, you've taken all the supplements, you've switched your probiotics, you've, done yoga, you've worked on your gut health, at some point you come to introspection and realize what a big part stress and the relationships in your life really do play in your health, just like I did and I have. And so today I have a really special guest for you. Her name is Emilia Nagy, and we're going to tackle some really important questions today about how to bust through some stress that might be interfering with your work, your personal life, and importantly, your health. And so Emilia, she's no stranger to relationship drama. And, she's finally married her soulmate and is now in a peaceful, passionate partnership. But she did have to heal familiar patterns and relationship pain to create this desired partnership. She teaches conscious, successful women how to create peace and nurturing at home. And every step toward a more peaceful family is a foundation toward a more peaceful world. And that's kind of your tagline, hey? Yeah. So maybe before we get started, would you mind just telling us a little bit about yourself and how you got into this? Did you start out wanting to be the relationship?
Yeah, how I got into it is that in my 20s, I had an emotionally abusive relationship. And I thought I was going to marry this guy, and I almost did. And thank God I didn't. But basically, I had this realization in that moment, like nothing we did worked out. We kept having fights. There was just no peace. And I had this really profound realization that war starts in the family. Like if I was going to marry him, this was going to continue into our family, and it was going to drain me and my children. And I thank God was able to move out of that situation and into healing. But it was really this realization of like, how can we possibly think that we can contribute towards world peace if we're not able to create peace in our own family, like in our own relationship?
Right. You had a bit of your own health journey. Can you tell me a little bit about that as well?
Yeah, so I right now am doing very well, but I started with basically what later I found were symptoms of CPTSD, which is complex post-traumatic stress. And that is something that you get from prolonged trauma, which can be emotional trauma, which can be shaming, which can be narcissistic abuse, which is what I had. But basically I had IBS, I had migraines, I had PCOS, and horrible, horrible PMS, depression, anxiety, fibromyalgia. It was primarily a lot of chronic conditions that lasted for a long time. But for me, is this what can I say about what happened? What changed it?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, go.
So what changed it all around was that I had a daughter, and it really made me look at how my energy was being used by me. It really made me look at what am I doing with my energy and who am I giving my energy to. And one of the people that I was giving a lot of energy to was my mother. And she, had a lot of dysfunctional patterns and a lot of needs for me. And once I was able to really cut that relationship off in a way that now there's some very succinct boundaries, I suddenly had so much energy. Like we cleaned our backyard, we built like a cabin, we like created a whole other source of income. My IBS went away. My migraines are not completely gone, but I have like 10% of the migraines that I used to have. Fibromyalgia is about 90% gone. I mean, depression, anxiety, I will say, I can't say that like it just happened naturally. I did take medication, but the decision to take medication was one of self-honoring and self-love rather than like, oh, something's wrong with me and I'm ashamed. And, these are my ears going down, by the way. My dog ears going down.
So changing these patterns helped you to approach your own health differently and see yourself as more worthy Okay.
Yes, and get the
Love and
help
help.
I needed and get the support I needed, whatever that looked like.
Right. Because a lot of us, I'm like, I don't have a worthiness issue. I'm fine. But maybe there are just patterns that are so deep-seated that we don't really know what's happening.
Yeah, and I think the place to look is how we feel. Are we drained? Do we have anxiety? Are we making the money we want to make? Are we making the contribution we want to make? And I think most of us know, even if we don't think necessarily we have a worthiness issue, most of us know if there's an issue in those areas. A lot of times for women that are successful and conscious, it shows up in relationships.
Right.
As actually some of the patterns that we learned in order to survive some of possibly the emotional difficulties of our childhood or previous relationships, some of those patterns were warrior patterns of survival and get it done and discipline. And those patterns served us great in business. And most of us have successful, thriving businesses, yet there's a place within us where we're drained and we could do way more or contribute way more if we can just heal that part.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, and just to one more time, I know you guys are all probably getting really sick of me saying this, but stress has been shown to make you gain weight, to reduce your blood glucose tolerance, it's bad for your bone density, it's bad for your digestive health, it can interfere with absorption of all sorts of essential minerals and proteins, and it can reduce your stomach acid, and it's just bad. Stress is bad.
Yeah, so it's like whatever you need to get off of stress.
Yeah. But living in a situation where there's a constant sort of, if there's a person that we interact with on a day-to-day basis, where we feel less than ourselves, that's a kind of stress.
It is a kind of stress because that creates shame. Because shame is the fear of not being worthy of love and belonging. And shame actually creates a biochemical response in the body. This is now being studied. It creates a flight and fight response. So even though we don't think of this as like a car accident or a huge health problem or, this big catastrophe, it's just a slow, low-grade drain on our body that just is constant.
Right. And we know that when we're in fight or flight, I'm surprised that they're actually studying shame with fight or flight. But yeah, we know that when we're in fight or flight, our bodies are programmed to not care about those higher things in life, like absorption of our minerals and reproduction and our hormone balance and living our purpose and being of service and being able to love others and be a good person. Our bodies are concerned with our immediate survival, and rightfully so.
Rightfully so. And then what happens too, actually, what they're studying is the brain, and what happens is that actually the higher functions of the brain shut off and the blood flow goes to the limbic system. Mm-hmm. So you're more in the reptilian brain, more in the survival brain, and then that kind of is a feedback loop in and of itself that keeps recreating that.
Right, but it's not meant to be something that we live in.
Right, and if you think about what shame is basically somebody telling you you're unworthy of love and belonging. So what does that mean to our caveman primal self? We depended on the tribe, we depended on being in a community. Now it's different. Now we literally can survive on our laptop, totally isolated, because we can order all our food and we can do all our things. But our bodies That's illusion. Exactly. Our bodies weren't made that way. Our minds are not made that way. We're made for connection. We're wired for love and belonging. So when we don't have that, it's such an intense stress, even if it may appear low grade or may not appear catastrophic. Yeah. Over the long term, it's severe.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for letting me just totally nail that home. Thanks for everything that you said. Okay, what do you see as the number one reason why successful conscious women struggle in their romantic relationships? Because it's sort of, there are these main relationships. There's the parental relationship, there's the relationship with our kids, and there's the spousal partnership.
Right. So generally, if there's unresolved issues in the parental I'm just going to hit it home.
Okay.
Yeah, if there's unresolved issues in the parental relationships, those are going to show up in your romantic partnership. That's it. They're going to, and we all know this. I mean, we all know this.
Yeah.
None of us that are parents, we see this come up all the time, right? Mm-hmm. Now, it's a matter of how do we address those things. So there's that. There's a piece of just repeating patterns that don't function the way that we need them to and want them to. And there's just a generational, what I believe in, what my teacher, Allison Armstrong, calls our blind spot as women. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like a generational blind spot in terms of relating to men. We had the feminist movement come and do this amazing thing for us where, they create, we're not now able to have everything. We own businesses, we have income, we have pretty much, some of you might argue with me, I know, but
I'm totally going to argue with you. Yeah.
We have a lot of things that we didn't have for a long time. And
right.
We've come a long way, and we have a lot of resources. We have a lot of capacity. Women are rising up to support and nurture each other. And we have this sisterhood. We have a lot of things that are just incredible.
Right.
So with that, there sort of came this aspect of like throwing the baby out with the bathwater, where okay, so hold on, my dog's, stop it! Leave it. Good boy, thank you. Okay, he left it. He's making a ruckus out there. Yeah, so we kind of have this piece that's like we threw out the baby with the bathwater. Now there's this movement of like, how are we equal and or better than men? And we are stuck still in some ways fighting this battle. And I feel like that causes so much adversity in our partnerships at home rather than partnership. And so this is like our blind spot around how to really connect with men. Like, they are different. They have a different brain. They have different ways that their body reacts. They have different hormones. It's all biochemical. It's not like, oh, it's not true. People say to me, no, we're the same. In this day and age, it's just how you're raised. If you're raised with dolls, you'll be feminine. If you're raised with trucks, you'll be masculine. And it's like, yeah, that is a part of it. And there's significant biochemical reasons why certain things are fulfilling to a female brain drenched in estrogen that are not fulfilling to a male brain. For example, talking for a long time.
Right.
Talking for a long time are just not fulfilling to the masculine brain. Talking for a long time is very fulfilling to the estrogen drenched feminine brain.
Right.
It's how we are wired as women to connect. So there's just a lot of differences that we're just not aware of. We're not aware of. So that's like it's sort of like a cultural blind spot, I think, and it's huge. I see it cause a lot of problems in relationships all the time. And the other piece is when we talked about the structure of the relationship and of the romantic relationships and the issues that come up in there, I think there's a lot of things get created from something called the mother wound. Mm-hmm. And the mother wound is basically where our fathers may have been the lower functioning or the alcoholics, or, they may have been the ones that perhaps were creating the drama in our families, but we watched how our moms dealt with that or didn't deal with that. Mm-hmm. We watched how our moms suffered. We watched the ways that they basically dealt with that situation. And I think what we have to remember is that in their time, there really was, like, if you think about it, I know my mom didn't have birth control. And I know this sounds ridiculous, but birth control marks such a pinnacle of choice and freedom for women. Like, just the fact that children were being had without intention or focusing, without like intention or like a specific focus. It was like primarily an accident, like think about this.
Right.
Most of the people on the planet today of our generation and earlier are primarily an accident. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Like, our kids are not, because, you know, I think not everybody, but if we're practicing conscious parenting and we're using our family planning and all this stuff, you know, our kids are very a conscious decision. We have that ability. They
Right.
didn't have that ability.
Right.
So I think what that just creates is, like, we're the first generation that has the capacity, the resources, the information,
Mm-hmm.
the support, and the ability to really handle the mother wound, like these generational patterns that get handed from generation to generation to generation.
Okay. I want to bring something up. So yes, the male-female dynamic, and there's a lot to get into with there's complexity. There are a lot of relationships that are like female-female, male-male. Like, there are a lot of relationships where there is still an unhealthy relationship dynamic, but it has nothing to do with us not being able to relate to man brain.
Right. Because it's a gay couple or some other kind of variation.
Right. Yeah. So would that just be like family patterns that we're like just continuing to live?
Yeah, that would definitely be a piece of it. You still will have the female male brain piece of it active, because in you know, if you have two men, then it's still helpful to know how men's brains work.
Right.
And how they're relating to each other. If you have two women,
right,
it's still helpful to know how two women brain, how two female brains work.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
But basically, that, I think that is a whole other layer that I talk about later on, I think. But basically, that is the question of polarity. Mm-hmm. And polarity is an energetic thing, where that's what creates the passion in relationships. Polarity is the female-male energy dynamic. It doesn't have anything to do with the biochemistry of the brain necessarily. It has to do with the mode that the person likes to live in.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
There's plenty of masculine male people that are more in their feminine and are not really the warrior types, for example, you know.
Right.
And then there's plenty of women who are living in the masculine portion of themselves, where they're, you know, really focused on creating results and other things that are driven more by things like focus, for example.
Totally. Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. Thank you. But so why is having a secure relationship even important? Like, in terms of our health or our businesses, or like, why do we need that? Like, why can't I just be single?
Yeah. Why can't we just be single? That'd be so much easier, right? We can. You know, I think that's definitely a choice that we have now as women that is important to honor and like hold. If you think about, I think even just 100 years ago, you either were a wife and a mother, or you were a nun.
Right.
Like, there wasn't really another choice. There was not. We didn't have what we have. So there wasn't the choice to be financially independent. For the most part, women didn't own property. They didn't have an income, right? So we couldn't do what we can do now. So if you want to be single, go for it. Like, it's totally your choice. Now, from the perspective of a female, our brains are wired for love and belonging, for connection. I mean, we all are, not just females, we all are, but for the feminine brain, it's even more important. And also, this kind of goes more into the esoteric and spiritual aspects of things, but romantic love is divine love. We have the capacity to heal within our romantic relationships, things that it's just a straighter path. It's just a more enjoyable, sometimes, path to moving through some of the lessons that we can learn about love. Mm-hmm. But I think for those of us who are like a woman on a mission, and we know we have a purpose, and we know we have something in the world to offer, is just paramount, because when we are loved, we heal.
Right.
And then when we heal, we contribute. And then when we contribute, the world gets a little better every day. And then when we're making our contribution towards a more peaceful world, then like we really are doing our part. And we can do our part. We have the choice to do our part now in our day and age. We have the support. So why is it paramount? Why is it important? Because it is. And
Right.
it's biochemical, it's spiritual. I mean, we can't deny it. We all have the drive. So
but can we heal these shame patterns? Can we heal these like ancestral kind of unhealthy dynamics even when we are single?
That's a very good question. Yeah. I think it's possible, but I haven't seen it happen as much as in romantic relationships. But I think it's possible. I do know people like that I work with in my group that they're single and they're creating some of these patterns within friendships. They're creating the similar dynamics. So I think it will get played out just because of what we bring to the table.
Right.
Regardless of the relationship, but I think romantic relationships are the most likely just because they're the most intimate.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Also the most likely to be fulfilling.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so what are the 3 big secrets to having a peaceful and passionate partnership, as you call it?
Well, so I'm primarily talking to heterosexual women. Yeah. Okay, who are relating with men and wanting to create deep connection that's fulfilling with men, right? So aside from the generational and ancestral patterns that are getting passed on, and healing those, there's 3 other areas that I'm talking about now. So these are specific. So one of them is Manglish. So learning Manglish is Allison Armstrong has a book on this. That's my teacher. So it's Allison Armstrong at understandmen.com. And she basically teaches us what men mean when they say A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So for example, if he says, can I get you a coffee? That means, can I take care of you?
Oh, I need this book.
We don't always think of it that way.
When
he says, don't buy this car, buy this car.
Yeah, I'm like, you don't want me to do what I want to do.
Right.
That's not what they mean.
No. When he says, don't buy this car, buy this car, they're protecting us. They want to provide for us.
So it's not like because I have lavish spending habits and I'm being judged. Like, seriously.
No. And it's also not because they think you're incapable of making that decision for yourself.
Right.
Which is how a lot of women take it these days.
Oh,
this is the blind spot. This is the blind spot I was talking about. So,
right. But okay, hold on. So isn't understanding Manglish kind of just like assuming that when people are communicating with us, they actually have good intentions? Like, are we all walking around just going like, oh, that person said that. It must mean that, like, they don't like my hair. That person said that. It must mean that, like, they think I'm a whatever. Like, are we actually kind of thinking negatively when people are talking to us? Just anybody?
I think we're so set on, like, our current cultural focus as women, we're so set on being independent and almost to a point of like having to prove it. That it's not that we're being defensive or we're assuming negative things. I think it's that we're just coming from a paradigm of valuing independence and thinking that that is going to give us something that's fulfilling when in fact it doesn't. And so valuing independence only goes so far in terms of having a partnership. That's why, if you want to be single, if you value independence, then you should be single. If you value creating a team and working as part of a team, which I'm still learning to be part of, sometimes I'm really not a good team player, then then, you know, the great thing about partnership is being able to do that. But if you're going to like be independent in partnership, it's not going to work.
Right.
You know, that's what a lot of us try to do, is we try to be independent. And not that we won't be independent. I'm not talking about being codependent.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about being interdependent.
Right. Yeah, that's a skill that I think, I mean, it's not focused on anywhere.
Yeah.
We don't learn that in school.
We don't learn it in school, and I see it over and over and over, and how it just creates a lot of difficulties in partnerships, and a lot of the difficulties come from the women's side. Like, right. We say, oh, he's so unavailable, or he's so emotionally childish, or, you know, we think all these things about men, and it's not true at all, you know. Right. So that would be the first thing, is to learn Manglish. And so Alison Armstrong has a really good book on this. It's like $16. It's called Understanding Men. And the second thing would be understanding polarity. And polarity is the female and male energies. They're basically just energies. Like if you do Qigong, or if you do any kind of, what is it, Eastern healing traditions, a lot of it is focused around energy and how energy flows. So this is like the yin and the yang, the feminine and the masculine energy. So there's feminine forms of power, and there's masculine forms of power. Masculine forms of power are generative, and they're penetrative, and they're persistent. That's masculine forms of power. They're creative. They're kind of like, they push into things. You know, it's a pushing into things. Feminine forms of power are magnetic. They're receptivity. They're things like receptivity, compassion, generosity. Those are forms of power that are based on creating a space. You know, there's a proverb I love. It's a Chinese proverb. When you have a green field in your heart, a singing bird will come. So that makes me think of the feminine forms of power. It's all about creating a wonderful place, a wonderful space. It's not penetrative at all. It's almost like Alison Armstrong says, we're most powerful when we have an empty space within us as women. And if you think about this goes with our biochemistry too, right? Like, we have a womb, we're women, we don't have a penis. Our whole being, physically and emotionally and spiritually, is made to function in a certain way, and that's different from a male being.
Yeah.
You know? So that's the second thing, is understanding polarity. And then the other thing is boundaries. This one is huge. I see it all the time in relationships, is for us to really get to the next level in terms of who we're serving in our life and our businesses, is boundaries are so huge. And I mean, that's like one small word, but it's basically how I think of boundaries. It's like practicing receptivity,
right,
with a really amazing, really well-made, personalized sifter.
Right.
That's what boundaries is.
This is an excellent description. I spend a lot of time talking about boundaries because it's a huge dynamic with digestive healing, like letting in the things we want to let in and not letting in the things we, leaky gut, this whole thing. And a lot of the time, when I talk about this, I know that it's being received as people just need to learn how to say no to stuff they don't want to do. And it's more than that. It's about letting in, as well as, like, it's, a sifter. It's a brilliant analogy. Did I steal it?
Thanks. Yeah, it's, one of our biggest powers as feminine beings, whether we're living in our feminine as fully as we belong to or not, is receptivity. And receptivity, I think, to those of us, again, who have been raised with strong values of independence, receptivity is so difficult, but it's also the reason that we don't necessarily have well-functioning boundaries and we are drained.
Yeah.
So really the place to work and look at and play with is receptivity, because we need to be able to receive, which is vulnerable, which can be scary, mm-hmm. but what cancels all that scary out and in fact gives us an even larger power than if we were to be the one giving is having boundaries. Mm. It's saying yes to this, no to this, yes, but I would like it this way. Yes, and can I have it here? Thank you. It's like really making it customized for yourself. So that's a huge, that was a huge lesson for me, and it took me a long time because I was in my masculine energy for so long, you know, with my real estate business, doing six figures, selling, you know, it was great, but I was so drained. I was so drained from that and from my relationship dynamics, from my dating drama, from my dynamics with my parents. I mean, that's why I had all those illnesses.
Mm. So would you say that it's like, I'm hearing kind of a difference here, like there's a dichotomy, like it's the difference between fighting to have the right to just exist on this planet and just take up space and always having to prove that it's okay that we're taking up space versus like being worthy of our freaking existence. Really.
Yeah, and I think that's where we're at, you know, culturally and generationally, and like if you look at the timeline, I think we have this sacred job of right just where we're at in our lives right now, the women that we are, is we have this really sacred moment in history where it's like we can move away from that whole concept of needing to fight for our rights and needing to prove ourselves and needing to be independent. We can move away from that. We really, like, I give us all permission. Mm-hmm. I think it's really necessary that we move away from that, because in that context, in that mindset, we cannot create peace and we cannot create partnership. Mm-hmm. And many of us yearn for that, and many of us know that that is the foundation for our lives and the lives of our children. Mm-hmm. and other people that are in our circle, and how important and how crucial that is. Right. So yeah, I think it's a moment in history where we have that choice to move away from that paradigm, and I see many of us doing it, and it's just so amazing, and it's just so inspiring and so powerful. My teacher Allison Armstrong talks about this as the difference between being important mm-hmm. and being priceless.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So the difference of like, I'm important because I provide A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And then it's like that I'm priceless. Like my being, my bringing peace, my bringing serenity, my having receptivity with conscious loving boundaries. Right. That is like being priceless, like bringing that to our family. Bringing that serenity and peace and worthiness to our family is priceless. It's totally priceless, and it's like I feel it's worth doing whatever we have to do to bring it.
Right. Okay.
So it's possible, because believe me, we won't bring it every moment, every day. I don't. Okay. Right. I totally lost it yesterday for sure. I'm just saying, you know, it's like it's a way of living that, you know, that's moving away from having to prove our worth.
Right. Okay, so this is leading me to another question. And I want to preface the question with like, okay, that's all great, but like, I have a successful business, I have like a family, and I have hobbies. Like, I don't have time for like to like sit and meditate and be worthy and stuff. Like, I got some stuff going on. So my question is like, can we really have it all?
But it's so much fun, though. I know it sounds all scary and like, oh, I have to do shame resilience. Oh, my God. Like, it sounds so horrible. And, yeah, there's definitely, like, moments that are not fun, okay, like in anything, right? But it's fun. It's fun, and I think it's really like the key ingredient to having it all. As much as having it all is a little bit of like a fantasy, like a fairy tale kind of fantasy.
Right.
From that point of view, it's like having it all is a little ridiculous, right? So from that point, we'll say like no, but
sorry,
having it all from the point of view of like wanting what we have, you know, like not like being in a place of deprivation in any way.
right?
Really honoring the moment in history that we're in and the resources available to us and what choices and freedoms we have as women that our ancestors have died for.
Right.
From that perspective, can we have it all? I really believe that yes, we can have it all. I mean, I have my shame gremlins every day. I struggle with issues every day, but every day is so much fun because I'm a mom and I'm a wife, and I'm also working on my mission and my passion in life. I'm doing all of these things, and I have amazing women in my life like Steph supporting me, and I get to support amazing women like Steph and other people. Like, this is new. This is all very new to us. This is amazing.
Right.
So from that point of view, can we really have it all? I think we can. I think we can. So it's not a matter of like this issue of comparisitis. No?
Is that a good dinosaur?
It's a kind of comparisitis. Like, it's like, you know, it's not an issue of like, oh, she has it all. You know, like you know, that thing that we say about her, oh, she has it all. She's got the look. She's got the car. It's like, no, it has nothing to do with that. It's about, can we really have the life that we desire?
Right.
And the answer is, if you live in Canada, the United States, New Zealand, Austria, Australia, Germany, the Netherlands, I mean, there's all these places in the world where the answer, I think, is a resounding yes.
Right.
Unfortunately, with that also goes the fact that there's parts in the world where that's not a resounding yes. But I think as we take on that choice, as we take on owning that choice and having it all in terms of what we want, what we desire for our life, we start to want to lift others up and do things for women, other women in other places of the world where that may not be available.
Right. Is it fair to say that, like, I guess if we don't know what it feels like to not be feeling stress and unworthiness, then like it's kind of like an experiential thing? Like, if we don't know what it feels like to, I'm just going to say have it all because I can't think of another, if we don't know what that feels like, then we don't know that we don't have it. Am I making sense?
Yeah, I think, well, I think we do know if we don't have it. And the way that we know is that we have stress and we have a chronic, ongoing, unresolved something.
Right. And yeah, we already connected stress to health issues, but I mean, It's real. This stuff's real.
So that's where I think that's where we look when we can look at this, when we think about this and say, well, that's fine for her, but that's not a reality for me.
Right.
You know, because I'm in this bad relationship or this or that. And it's like, well, yes, and there's absolutely no reason for any of us to be in any kind of less than fulfilling relationships here in America, for example. Why would we? We don't have to. We used to have to because we had no other options.
Right, but it can feel like there are no options. I mean, right. And that's, that's stressful.
So if it feels that way, that's a place to look, right? So if it feels that way, it's like, why does it feel that way? Like, what is that based in? And what is our chronic anxiety? What is it around? What is it around providing or not providing, or being or not being? Or I know one of the things that's really helpful to distinguish here is what Brene Brown talks about, which is the female shame triggers, which they're just like triggers that are out there in the society we live in. So those are some ways that we may be applying stress. We may be, I'm not going to say applying stress to ourselves. I'm going to say we may be engaging in unnecessary stress that's socially constructed. You know, like there's that piece. So let me just mention those and get those out of the picture so that we understand that's not what we're talking about. But the 3 shame triggers are the top is how we look. Mm-hmm. So that, you know, that's just a social trigger and still very, very prevalent among all age groups. Mm-hmm. How we look, how we age. The second one is how we mother, are we a good mother or not. So it's basically when women get shamed, they get shamed around how they look, are they fat or not, and what kind of a mother are they. And the third one is perfectionism and how perfect are we being. So I mean, all of those are sources of stress, right? Because these are social shame constructs. These happen to us every day, which is why developing shame resilience is important.
But we don't see that as stress. Like we look at a billboard, our mother makes a comment or whatever. We don't see that as stress. Like it's so common. We're just taking it in stride and absorbing the stress.
Yeah. And it's important to develop shame resilience in understanding those and being able to kind of like notice them when they're happening and respond to them in a way that's healthy and loving to ourselves. So that's one reason why it's important to practice shame resilience. But what we were talking about earlier was something different, which is the shame that comes from being in a relationship that is not serving, is in a place where it's draining you, and we were talking about, well, how do we know that we can, you asked, how do we know that we can have it all if we don't even know what that feels like, right? Mm-hmm. So what I was saying is, aside from the common shame triggers, which make us think that having it all looks a certain way, mm-hmm. right? There's actually the piece about how are we feeling? Like, where's our energy going? Do we feel nourished? Do we feel healthy and strong? And particularly if there are long-term health issues that are chronic, that's definitely a place to look for stress that's unresolved, that's outside of some of these parameters, although some of these parameters may also affect it.
Right.
Am I making sense?
Yeah, you're making sense. It's just a really hard topic, and I've been making light of a lot of things today, but this is real and it's sad, and our relationships, our partnerships, I mean, a lot of them are lifelong unions, and if we're in an unhealthy situation, it's affecting everything, and we might not even realize it, I guess, essentially.
Right, and we know it. We know it in our heart. We know it in our heart. I remember the moment in my life when I knew it but didn't know it, but didn't want to know it, but I knew it, And it was like this moment when it was like this tiny little vulnerable part of me. I kind of think of it like a little green sprig, like just barely sprouting from the seed, and just like turning her soul and her face towards the sun and like, but is it really possible? Can I really have that? Moment of like,
you're so funny.
Is it really?
Yeah.
But you know what? It was just like this little green seed barely peeking out of the seed. It just came from the idea of like, I think maybe possibly I can have a safe, secure, loving partnership that's going to nurture me on my soul's work.
Right.
I think maybe somewhere in this amazing universe full of possibilities, even if I have no experience of what that looks like, even if I never sat between my parents, even if I have all these wounds, it was like, you have that little part in your heart that leans into the possibility, and suddenly it's different. Suddenly life is different because you're seeking that possibility. And for me, I was like really afraid, right? Because it's like going into the next level and you're afraid of being disappointed, you're afraid of being vulnerable, you're afraid of failing and all the shame things that go with that, right? But it's like, I think once that little green piece of seed is come opening and you have that little bit of hope, and somebody like me maybe is going, hey, let's do it, y'all. Like, we're the ones we've been waiting for. We can have it. I swear we can. I promise you. Look at me. I came from narcissistic abuse and shame and communism, and it was sad and it was terrible, but oh my God, thank God I did the work, because I have an awesome partner that I never thought it was possible to support me now in being a mom and in doing my life's work, and it's like, thank God I did the work. And yeah, it's hard and yeah, it's sad, but it's so worth it. And sometimes it's fun. It's not always hard and sad. Sometimes it's silly.
Right.
But it's so worth it, because then you also heal. You most likely will heal a lot of health issues.
Right.
I hope I don't sound really full of myself now.
No.
I'm like, look at me! Da, da, da.
Oh, Amelia, you're so funny. But so if we determine that unhealthy relationship dynamics are an issue for us, like, is it possible to, like, just have the same partner, like, to heal that and to stay with the same partner?
I think so. I think it depends on, how far along your partner is and how much work they're willing and able to do. I know one thing that is really important is just really getting clear on what you need and being committed to having that for yourself.
Right. So it's more about the inner work of working on ourselves.
Yeah, because you can. And because if one person shifts their energetic space and their point of view and their way of interacting, the partnership has no choice but to shift. So either that partnership is going to shift into a higher level of support and integration, or it's going to shift out of that, and then, you'll know. I do know one thing, though, is that men are much more willing to partner and give us what we need than we think. And I normally see that it's us women that are creating a dynamic of not receiving enough. So when that gets corrected, when we allow him to contribute to us in a way that is really meaningful, even if it's vulnerable or scary,
right,
a lot in the relationship can shift.
Right. So this is like a whole pattern that just permeates every area of our lives, this whole receptivity thing. Like, if we're not in receptivity, how can we really have health and wealth and happiness and love? And like, yeah, I think I'm getting what you're saying here.
It's true. Receptivity is the most powerful form of feminine power. Right. Receptivity with appropriate boundaries. Because I think some of us, when we think of receptivity, especially if we come from abusive dynamics, we think about getting too much of what we wanted. In some cases, it wasn't that we didn't get enough of what we wanted. In some cases, we got too much of something. That also can be abusive, whether it was too much of something we wanted or too much of something we didn't want, right? So that also can be difficult. But yeah, practicing receptivity with well-oiled, comfortable, easy boundaries. Alison Armstrong always says, set your boundaries at fine, not at upset. So it's like, but part of this is the inner work, like you said, around really looking at what fills our tanks. Like, I know for me, I need to walk my dog in the morning in the canyon. That just makes, puts me in my body, relaxes me. It gives me a lot of nurturing. And I didn't do it yet this morning, so I'm going to do it after we get off this call. There's just things that we know nurture us. So it's almost like breaking it down to, like, how many units of nurturing do we get from one unit of this? Like, I know I get, like, a lot of units of nurturing from a yoga class.
Yeah,
I don't get nearly as many units of nurturing from eating a sandwich.
Right, right.
You know, even if it's a healthy sandwich.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes when we say nurturing, we're thinking about food.
Yeah,
which is so weird.
I know. That's
really a love dynamic.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm really working on in my life right now about on how do I nurture myself outside of food, because I've had a food issue. You know, we're trying to nurture myself with food my whole life in ways that, you know, like only gives me so much nurturing that I could be getting this much doing something else.
Right, right.
Other than eating, you know.
Right, makes sense. Yeah, yeah. And then we could totally get into eating under stress, but we're not going to. But so, like, what's the number one thing that you'd like us to know?
I just want us to know, I think that we're in a very pivotal moment in history. It's really exciting and it's really amazing. As the women, we have a lot of freedom of choice and resources, and it's just an amazing, amazing time, and there's just absolutely no reason that any of us should be in any kind of abusive dynamics or dissatisfying dynamics. Now, mind you, I'm not saying your relationship should be perfect all the time and everything should be hunky-dory. No, there's always little things to work out, but it shouldn't be where it's draining you and taking away from your life force and taking away from your work or from your spiritual service or from being the person that you desire and know you can be. You know, so my message is like, it's our turn. It's like we're the ones we've been waiting for. Like the Dalai Lama says, the world will be saved by the women of North America. And this is part of the work. Why? Why? Because we have the resources, we have the awareness, we have the information, we have the freedom, we have the choices, and we live in countries that give us that. For the most part, we have that. So I feel like we have such a freedom, and I almost feel like we also have a responsibility to just do it. Do it. Live a great life. It sounds so selfish and crazy, but it's like we can do it. We can. We have everything. We're not deprived in any way. Like we're not oppressed in any way. We can do it. We really can. Even though we may have these dynamics from our mothers of depression and deprivation and all these things, like that's really not our reality. Like it's really not, even though it may seem that way, you know. So I want us to just take away that we are magical beings. We're magical beings who can manifest our clear intentions into reality. We're magical beings, and we're the ones we've been waiting for. So it's time, ladies. It's time to have a great life.
Yeah.
It's time to have a great life.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah, there's no reason why any of us should be unloved or unworthy. And if that's part of the dynamics that's keeping us down, keeping us sick, keeping us stressed, then it deserves to be addressed. Absolutely. And how can we really give when we're not able to receive? That sounds super cheesy.
No, it's absolutely true. That you can't give from an empty cup. You know, that's the whole piece about learning to fill our cups so that we can give. That's the piece about, you know, learning what fills our tanks the most and how we can most nurture ourselves.
Yeah.
We're in this place where, I mean, I'm on this mission, which I fail from daily, believe me, but I'm on this mission of exquisite self-nurturing. And doing as much as I can for that, giving myself quiet time and creative time and outdoor time and all these things that I know I need, and all the shame things around mothering. For example, oh, my baby's in daycare and I'm here luxuriating in the jacuzzi or whatever, you know, what a selfish thing, you know. But there's this just thing in my heart that I know I'm doing the right thing. Yeah, I know I'm doing the right thing, because then she gets a happy, loving, mom that she doesn't have to feel she has to take care of, or, you know, give from her resources in any way so that I'll be okay.
Right.
Which is what I think a lot of us have that, right?
Yeah.
And that's very difficult.
Yeah.
That's part of what we talked about with the mother wound. So even though it seems so crazy and it's really breaking some kind of weird wall, it's like, yeah, I'm going to stay in the jacuzzi and luxuriate for 15 minutes. And that's an act of rebellion and revolution in itself.
Right. It's so true. Yeah, so maybe for people who feel like the last thing they could do is like watch a movie in the middle of the day, or like go for a walk in the canyon, or like hang out in the jacuzzi, and they actually know now that they need help with this issue. For people who are feeling triggered by this, even a little bit annoyed, do you help people with this? How can we get in touch with you?
I don't know.
I don't know. I don't help people. Yeah. How can we get in touch with you?
No, you guys are on your own. I don't know. Just kidding. Yes, I do. I'm honored and delighted to help anyone who, like me, has that little green seed is opening, and it's like, maybe I can. Maybe I really can. And
you have systems, that you've worked tons of people through. How, like, dozens of clients? You've done group programs, hundreds of clients. Yeah.
So the program now that I've created is called Worthy of Love.
Right.
And if you want to learn more about that, you can reach me at womanworthyoflove.com. Bye.
Bye.